I never imagined that my wedding day, the day that was supposed to be filled with love, joy, and the start of a beautiful new chapter, would turn into an absolute nightmare. But it wasn't just bad luck or some unfortunate coincidence. No, this disaster had a name, Rachel, my stepsister. For context, my name is Olivia. My life changed when I was 10, after my dad remarried. That's when Rachel and her mother entered the picture. From the start, it was clear, Rachel was the golden child. She got everything she wanted, from my childhood toys to my father's attention. I always thought that one day, things would change. That maybe, just maybe, she would outgrow this need to compete with me, to take what was mine. But I was wrong. When I got engaged to my fiancé, Ethan, I hoped Rachel would be happy for me. But instead, the passive-aggressive comments started rolling in. Ethan could have done better on the ring, she smirked one evening, twirling her wine glass. It's cute, I guess. Then came the remarks about my dress. A bit simple, don't you think? But I suppose not everyone can pull off elegance. I let it slide. She was being her usual self, and I wasn't about to let her ruin my happiness. But then, Rachel announced her engagement to a guy she had been dating for only 4 months. That alone wasn't shocking, but the real punch to the gut? Her wedding date. The exact same as mine. At first, I laughed, thinking it had to be a joke. Rachel, you know that's my wedding day, right? She simply smirked. Yeah, but I figured one of us should have a wedding worth attending. I turned to my dad and stepmom, expecting them to tell her to cut it out. To remind her that I had been planning my wedding for over a year. That she could choose literally any other date. But they didn't. Instead, my father gave her a proud smile, as if she had just accomplished something extraordinary. Well, sweetheart, he said, you've always dreamed of a spring wedding. I nearly choked. I booked my venue more than a year ago. You can't just. My stepmother cut me off with an exasperated sigh. Olivia, you've always been so competitive with Rachel. Maybe it's time you let her have a moment. A moment? She was hijacking my wedding. Ethan was furious, ready to confront them all right then and there, but I placed a hand on his arm and shook my head. I refused to let her get to me, but I underestimated just how far Rachel was willing to go. The sabotage begins. At first, I convinced myself that Rachel's wedding day choice was just another one of her petty attempts to steal attention. Annoying? Yes. But I refused to let it ruin my wedding. I had Ethan, a beautiful dress, a dream venue, and people who truly cared about me. That was all that mattered. So I thought. A week before my wedding, I got a phone call from my venue coordinator. She sounded hesitant, apologetic. Olivia, I'm so sorry, she started, but we've had a scheduling issue, a double booking. My heart pounded. What? But I booked this place over a year ago. There shouldn't be any issues. There was a pause. Then, her next words sent an ice-cold chill down my spine. Well, your stepsister Rachel booked the venue under her name yesterday. And since she paid in full, the management assumed I didn't hear the rest. I hung up and stormed straight to my father's house, my hands shaking with rage. You let her steal my venue? I burst into the living room, where Rachel was lounging on the couch like a queen on her throne, casually flipping through her phone. She looked up and smirked. You really should have paid in full earlier, Liv. I turned to my father, expecting him to intervene. Expecting him to, for once, do the right thing. You knew about this? He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one causing problems. Rachel was willing to pay more, and the venue needed the money. I could barely breathe. You mean you paid for it? He didn't deny it. I walked out before I could scream. Before I could say things I would regret. Ethan held me that night as I sat in silence, my mind racing. We'll figure something out, he promised, and I believed him, but Rachel wasn't finished. A dress destroyed the night before my wedding. I stayed at a hotel, trying to get some peace of mind. But when I returned to my apartment the next morning to pick up my dress, the sight that greeted me made my stomach drop. The garment bag was on the floor. The zipper had been yanked open, and my wedding dress, it had been slashed to shreds. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Then, like a distant echo, my phone rang. I picked it up without looking at the caller ID. Hello? It was my father. Honey, Rachel told us what happened, he said, his voice laced with artificial sympathy. You really need to let go of this grudge. I felt like I had been punched. You think I did this? She said you were acting out, he continued, as if this was some minor argument between siblings. And you always did have a bit of a temper. That was it. That was the moment I realized my family had chosen her. Completely, they weren't going to stand by me. They weren't going to believe me. They had abandoned me, and I was done trying to earn their approval. I wiped my tears, squared my shoulders, and picked up my phone. Rachel thought she had one. My dad and stepmom thought they could sweep this under the rug, but they had no idea what was coming. Turning the tables, I made a few calls. If Rachel wanted to sabotage my wedding, I was going to make sure she regretted it. First, the venue. Ethan had a close friend whose family owned a stunning private estate. When I explained what happened, they were outraged. Take it, his friend said without hesitation. No charge. Let's make this a wedding to remember. Next, the dress. There was no salvaging what Rachel had done. But I wasn't about to let her see me defeated. I reached out to a designer boutique in town, explaining my situation. Wait, you're the bride whose dress got destroyed, one of the employees gasped. I saw the pictures on social media. That's insane. Pictures? Oh, yes. Someone had already posted about my situation in a wedding drama Facebook group. It was blowing up within hours. A local designer reached out personally. Let's make you look like a queen, she wrote. No charge. At this point, I almost wanted to send Rachel a thank you note. Because, unknowingly, she had made my wedding more unforgettable than I ever could have imagined. Rachel's downfall. Rachel thought she had won by stealing my venue. But what she didn't realize. The world was watching. Someone had tipped off the local news about a bridezilla sabotaging her own sister's wedding. And guess who loves a juicy scandal? The media. The morning of Rachel's wedding, she woke up to see her name everywhere. Bride accused of sabotaging sister's wedding, stole venue. Destroyed dress. There were photos of my shredded gown. Text messages exposing her cruelty. Even screenshots of her bragging in a group chat about how she had taught me a lesson. By noon, #Rachel the Wicked Bride was trending, but the best part, her venue, my original venue, cancelled on her. Turns out, they didn't love being at the center of a viral scandal. She arrived in her dress, screaming at the staff, only to be escorted out by security. Guests started bailing left and right. Meanwhile, I was having the wedding of my dreams. The estate was breathtaking. My new dress was even more stunning than my original one. And the people who truly loved me were there. To top it all off, a famous influencer had shared my story, and a few local celebrities even showed up to support me. And when my dad and stepmom finally came knocking, looking panicked, I already knew why. Rachel was begging them to fix the mess. The golden child had finally lost. Too bad for them, I had already moved on. I opened the door, standing there in my dazzling gown, glowing with happiness. I smiled sweetly. I don't think I know you. And then, I shut the door in their faces. The fallout begins. For years, I had been treated as the lesser daughter, the forgotten one, the afterthought in my own family. And now, they had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. Rachel had gone from being the golden child to the family disgrace practically overnight. After her venue kicked her out, she tried to salvage what was left of her wedding, but it was too late. Her guests, many of whom had already read about the scandal, had no interest in being associated with her disaster. Some left quietly, others sent texts saying they suddenly weren't feeling well. Even her bridesmaids abandoned ship. By the time she realized she had lost control, the only people left were our father, her mother, and a handful of relatives who didn't have social media, or simply didn't care about the drama. But the real kicker, her fiancé, the same guy she had only been dating for 4 months. The one she had rushed into marriage with just to outshine me, yeah. Turns out, he wasn't thrilled to find out that his bride-to-be was a trending topic for being a vindictive psycho. According to one of my friends, who had the best tea on the situation, he took one look at his phone, saw his fiancé's name all over the internet, and walked out without a word. Left her standing there in her wedding dress. She tried calling him dozens of times, but he never answered. Later, mutual friends confirmed that he had sent her a simple text: "I don't know who you are anymore. I'm embarrassed to be associated with you. I hope the attention was worth it." And just like that, Rachel's fairy tale wedding turned into a complete humiliation. But the universe wasn't done serving her karma just yet. The career killer Rachel had always wanted to be in the wedding industry. For years, she had gone on and on about how she was going to become one of the top wedding planners in the city, how she would own the industry, how she had a natural talent for making things perfect. Well, guess what? Not only did her employer fire her for unprofessional conduct, but her name became toxic in the industry. Venues blacklisted her, vendors refused to work with her, clients canceled their contracts, because really, who in their right mind would want to hire a woman who sabotaged her own sister's wedding out of jealousy? It didn't take long before she was completely unemployable. She tried rebranding under a different name, creating a new business account, but people weren't stupid. Someone recognized her immediately and exposed her again. Her dreams were dead in the water, and the best part, I didn't have to lift a finger. She had done it all to herself. Desperate attempts at reconciliation. You'd think after everything, my father and stepmother would finally realize that they had backed the wrong horse. That they would take responsibility for enabling Rachel's behavior. Nope. Instead, a week after my wedding, I received a long, dramatic email from my father. Olivia, we need to talk. I don't know where we went wrong, but the way you treated us at your wedding was unacceptable. You humiliated your sister, and now she's struggling. Don't you think you've made your point? I almost laughed. I took a deep breath before responding. Dad, where you went wrong? That started when you let Rachel walk all over me for years. When you watched her steal my venue, ruin my dress, and did absolutely nothing. You don't get to play the victim now. If you want to talk, you can start by apologizing. Until then, I have nothing to say to you. Then, I hit send. Silenced. It took months before my father reached out again. And by then, well, things had changed in a way they never saw coming. Rachel's rock bottom. Rachel had spent her whole life being the favorite. The one who never had to suffer consequences. The one who could do no wrong in our father's eyes, but now, she was unemployed, she was single, and, worst of all, she was irrelevant. She tried playing the victim, spinning the story that she had just been trying to teach me a lesson and that I had blown everything out of proportion. But no one was buying it. Her ex-fiancé had completely cut her off. Her attempts to start over in the wedding industry had been publicly torched, and every time she tried dating again, well, let's just say Google wasn't her friend, because the moment anyone searched her name, they found everything: screenshots, articles, social media posts. Rachel was now infamous in our social circles. A cautionary tale, and honestly, it was poetic justice. The final goodbye. One night, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Something in my gut told me to pick up. Hello? There was a pause. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Olivia. It's Dad. I let the silence stretch between us, waiting for him to speak. He sighed. I think we need to talk. About everything. I should have felt something: relief, anger, or sadness, but all I felt was a strange sense of finality, like I had already moved on. I glanced at Ethan, who was watching me with quiet support. Then, at the framed wedding photo on our wall, the one where I was truly happy, surrounded by people who actually cared, I took a slow breath. I don't think we do. Then, I hung up. The silence afterward felt heavier than I expected. I sat there for a moment, my phone still in my hand, my heartbeat steady. For my entire life, I had been chasing my father's approval, trying to earn the love he so freely gave Rachel, and now, for the first time ever, I wasn't chasing it anymore. I wasn't waiting for him to see me. To choose me, because I had already chosen myself. Ethan sat beside me, resting his arm against mine. He didn't say anything, he just let me sit in the quiet for a moment. Then, I turned to him and smiled. Let's go get some ice cream. And that was it. No deep conversation. No overanalyzing my father's intentions. No wondering what if, just a simple decision to do something for myself, with the person who actually mattered. And that was when I knew I had truly moved on. I thought I had heard the last of Rachel. I thought my father and stepmother had finally realized that I was done with them. I thought they would stay in the hole they had dug for themselves. I was wrong. 2 weeks after I hung up on my father, I received a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey Olivia, I just saw something weird and thought you should know. Is Rachel seriously trying to pass off your wedding as hers? My stomach twisted. I immediately clicked on the link they sent me. It was an Instagram page. A brand new account with a slightly altered version of Rachel's usual username, and the photos, they were mine. My wedding venue. My decorations. My cake. My dress. She had taken the professional photos Ethan and I had shared and was pretending they were hers. I clicked through the posts, my fingers trembling with rage. The captions made my jaw drop. The most beautiful day of my life. Still can't believe how perfect everything was. So grateful for my family and friends who made this day magical. Marrying the love of my life was everything I dreamed of and more. I felt sick. She wasn't just posting my wedding photos, she was rewriting history, pretending she had been the one standing at the altar. Pretending my family and friends had been her guests, and the worst part, people were falling for it. There were dozens of comments congratulating her. People saying she looked beautiful, that the wedding was so elegant, that they were so happy for her. I scrolled faster, my hands shaking. It wasn't just random people, there were comments from mutual friends, from extended family, from people who had ignored me on my actual wedding day. A white-hot rage coursed through me. Rachel wasn't just stealing my wedding, she was erasing me. She was trying to make herself the main character in my story, and she thought she could get away with it. Not a chance. I took a deep breath. I couldn't react emotionally. I needed to be smart about this. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took screenshots of everything, every photo, every caption, every comment. I made sure to save proof that Rachel wasn't just lying, she was convincing others to go along with it. And then, I decided it was time to return the favor. If Rachel wanted to live in a delusion where she was the perfect bride, I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. I just needed to make sure it hurt. Part 2, the final blow. I took my time crafting my response. I wasn't just going to call Rachel out, I was going to obliterate her. First, I sent the screenshots to a few close friends, the ones who had actually been there for me. Within an hour, the news was already spreading like wildfire. Then, I made my move. I opened my Instagram and uploaded a carousel of wedding photos, the same ones Rachel had stolen, but instead of her fake captions, I wrote the truth. Hey everyone. Imagine my surprise when I found out my stepsister decided to steal my wedding photos and pretend they were hers. For those who don't know, Rachel tried to sabotage my wedding by booking the same venue behind my back and even ripping my wedding dress. When my father and stepmother chose to stand by her, I had to face my wedding day alone. But guess what? I still had the best day of my life because I married the love of my life, surrounded by people who actually cared about me. Apparently, that wasn't enough for Rachel. Now she's pretending she got married that day, using my photos, my venue, and even my dress. I figured it was only fair to set the record straight. So, to everyone who congratulated her, just know, she didn't get married, she wasn't even invited. Then, for the final touch, I tagged Rachel's fake wedding account, and I tagged my father and stepmother. Then I sat back and watched the chaos unfold. Within minutes, my notifications exploded. People were commenting, resharing, messaging me with shock and disgust. Some of the same people who had congratulated Rachel were now furiously backpedaling. But the best part? Rachel's fake wedding account disappeared within the hour. She deleted everything, probably hoping to escape the humiliation, but it was too late. Screenshots of her lies were everywhere. People were laughing at her, calling her out, dragging her through the dirt. Some of our mutual friends, the ones who had blindly believed her, reached out, horrified, apologizing for their part in it. Even distant relatives who had ignored my actual wedding started messaging me, suddenly acting like they had been on my side all along. I ignored them. Rachel tried to call me. I let it ring. She tried texting me, spewing out half-assed excuses. I was just trying to fix my reputation. I didn't respond. She didn't deserve a response. And my father, oh, he finally called too this time. His voice was furious. How dare you humiliate your sister like this? I smiled. You mean like how she humiliated me? Like how you stood by and let her ruin my wedding? This is different. No, Dad, it's not. And guess what? I don't care what you think anymore. Then I hung up, and that was the last time I ever spoke to him. Rachel's reputation, it never recovered. She became a running joke among our mutual circles. A cautionary tale of what happens when you go too far. Her social media presence all but disappeared. She stopped showing up to family events, too ashamed to face anyone. And as for me, I moved on with my life, happier than ever. I had a husband who loved me, real friends who supported me, and the sweet satisfaction of knowing that I had taken back everything she tried to steal from me, and that was the real happily ever after.